Hey, welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast, coverage of VMware Explore 2025. John, we are joined now by a good friend of the show, Dilpreet Bindra. Dilpreet, welcome back.
Thank you. Really great to be here again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so great week here at in Vegas. You've been talking all week. I know you've had several sessions. And I know, like, every time we talk to you, we get really good information around Kubernetes.
Yeah.
And, you know, as John likes to refer to the hipster kids.
I think it's growing up, though. It's no longer just a bunch of DevOps hipster kids doing that thing. Like, I think the grown-ups are actually doing the Kubernetes.
They're actually doing it. That was going to be my question.
You know, I think it's interesting because Kubernetes has gone through a big journey over the past 6 years, let's say, you know, where it started with this, nascent use cases in line of businesses that application developers wanted to try out and so on.
Right.
And now it's shifted where IT is now embedding it into their core. And the reason why they're doing it is 80 to 90% of applications are now being written with Kubernetes. So any new application is being driven through Kubernetes and not through other interfaces because it's such a great platform for application development.
Yeah. And why is it a great platform, though?
Well, you know, it simplifies. One of the hardest things about applications is the deployment. How do you get consistent deployment? How do you make sure that you get consistency when you're developing it and you're testing it? And then when you take the same deployment that you codified there and you make sure that it deploys the same way in production. That is the key value that Kubernetes brings. It also really does a great job of abstracting the underlying infrastructure for that application.
This sounds a lot better than all the unnatural things Microsoft did, so DLL backwards compatibility with Zombie for 14 years.
Yeah.
But going through this, so the IT teams are bringing this on. This isn't just another silo. This isn't another stovepipe in the data center. They're consolidating this. How is the tooling? How is this blending into vSphere, which I know you have a long history with?
Last year we had a bunch of sessions around Kubernetes in Explore, right? This is the VM world replacement. This is Explore,
yeah,
right? And we had these sessions, and customers were just starting out. In a lot of our customers, about a third of them were deploying our Kubernetes. About 60% were deploying other Kubernetes, and 10% were still not there.
Yeah,
right? Now we see 100% of customers deploying Kubernetes, and now they're also very, very energized by the Kubernetes rebrand. Let me talk about that for a second. It's really, really important. If you look at any other on-prem Kubernetes offering, they're giving you a Kubernetes deployment that you have to deploy and manage as a pet. And I talked about this last year. It's showcasing even more so now. So you have to deploy this very, very large cluster. You have to divvy up the namespaces within that cluster for different application teams. Now when you go and upgrade, it's impossible to upgrade.
Yeah. This actually reminds me of OpenStack. People would deploy it had some multi-tenancy, and they tried to upgrade, like, oh, Nova, there was no upgrade path or some issue, like.
Yeah, and so, like, then customers sit on a very old Kubernetes for a very long time,
right,
and they have security issues. It is a serious, serious problem for them. Now when IT is picking this up and looking at it, they're like, hey, this way of managing Kubernetes just doesn't work. And so what we did was we built a service, kind of like cloud builds a service. So you have a managed Kubernetes offering that you give to your customers, and they can manage that Kubernetes directly. And so they instantiate a Kubernetes cluster. They own that Kubernetes cluster. The IT doesn't own it. Nobody else owns it. And they get to drive the Kubernetes cluster for whatever their needs are for the application. They also get to control the upgrade, because the upgrade of Kubernetes is very much directly tied to the application. You cannot change Kubernetes without having to change certain aspects of the application. So you really want the application owner to be able to dictate when that Kubernetes cluster upgrades.
Yeah. But you also don't want to have to tie that upgrade cycle to the platform life cycle.
Exactly. And so, like, one of the key things that we did in 8.0U3 is we separated VKS upgrades and delivery from the underlying platform. So now you have Kubernetes being delivered and the Kubernetes service being delivered asynchronously whenever the customer needs a new Kubernetes instance. And one of our guarantees is that we're going to make sure we deliver the next Kubernetes version within 8 weeks of the upstream delivery.
Oh, wow. That is, I mean, you have to be embedded in upstream delivery to be able to.
And we've been embedded for quite some time.
Yeah.
We've been working on Kubernetes projects for a very, very long time. We're, I think, the third largest contributor in the past, 5-10 years.
Right.
I forget it. I think it was 5 years. Where we are, embedded in certain CNCF projects, etcd, Harbor, Kubernetes, core Kubernetes as well. We have numerous different things that we're doing in the Kubernetes space. And, it's just now, especially like Cluster API, which was foundational for us when we embarked on Project Pacific, if you
I remember
back to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We worked closely with the Kubernetes community to create this Cluster API, so we didn't have to create some proprietary ways of managing the cluster.
Yeah.
And this was novel at the time, whereas all the other competitors that we have stuck to their proprietary versions or now just switching.
Yeah.
Well, and that makes it harder to keep up with lifecycle if you're going down your own bespoke, pretending that's a secret
This
sauce.
is like a problem as old as time in IT. Like, I remember back in my day when, there was Windows servers and then there would be Linux servers, and the Linux crew was like, these are more secure, they're lighter, there's a better use case for this Linux than just throwing a big fat unsecure Windows box on this.
Yes.
But then the problem would always be one, lifecycle management and security. And I feel like those things are still issues as we go into Kubernetes, where it's great, it's lighter, it's more secure, but then the maintenance of it, the lifecycle maintenance needs to be managed.
And that security has to be borne out by making sure you're updating Kubernetes as the CVEs patches come out, as the next version comes out. So you make sure that you're keeping up, and the only way you can is to be able to have a service that can be managed by your customer and by the application team so they can control that upgrade.
So you talked about some of the projects within the lifecycle that we work with. It sounds like there's been some announcements within of supporting capabilities across the ecosystem and other services.
Yeah,
about that?
We just delivered something pretty big. It's pretty awesome. So and it's already been delivered, so you can get it right away, is Argo CD support. Now we could have just delivered this in our Kubernetes service, but we went one step further. Of course, we have built a platform now that is built on Kubernetes. We have this really beautiful API layer, which we call Supervisor, that is built on top of vSphere, that takes all the foundational capabilities of vSphere, NSX, vSAN, and collates them into a single IaaS control plane. And so you can build all your services there. So we took the upstream Argo CD instance and we put it as a service inside of Supervisor. What does that mean? Well, you could do all your deployments using Git for Kubernetes, of course. And you could deploy a whole application that's based on Kubernetes purely using Git. So you do a Git push, it pushes into your infrastructure, it's all taken care of, right? And so you're confused. Let me walk you through.
I'm surprised that you can actually do that.
Yeah. So a developer works on their YAML, works out all of the aspects of their application, what kind of deployment they want. Here's the resource usage I want. Here are the services I want. Now it lays out their application and their application code and just commits to Git. And Argo listens to that.
Oh, it's watching the repo and just pulls it.
It's watching the repo and just pulls it
That's
directly
amazing.
in, right? And so we did that not only for Kubernetes, you can do that for VMs.
The VM service, everything else.
You can do that for AI services. You can do that for any
databases,
supervisor-based
anything else.
Databases, any supervisor-based service. So you have the Git-based integration for all of your underlying IaaS capability.
Infrastructure as code as it was meant to be. So.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, I know when last time we talked in Palo Alto, we were talking about some of the enhancements in VCF 9, and one of the big one I think in the Kubernetes space is monitoring, being able to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, with VCF 9, we have this VCF A or VCF automation capability, which breaks up your infrastructure into tenants or lines of businesses, depending on what kind of organization you are, and then delivers capabilities or services directly to your end users. And as they deliver those capabilities to your end user, those end users now have access to the metrics associated with those underlying services. So if they use VM service, they have the direct metrics required for them to be able to understand the usage of VM service.
Okay, so how are we pushing that out to them? Is that through operations or?
Yeah, so like I, as the VCF automation leader, don't want to deal with metrics, right? Metrics is Banu's job, who's in VCF operations, and he runs that team. So we've taken all the metrics that have been plumbed through VCF operations, and we have created a tenanted infrastructure to be able to drive those metrics directly into automation. So now you get all the great capabilities of operations in a tenanted view for that end user.
Okay, so I go into automation, I deploy my VMs, I deploy my app, and then I can go see my app metrics and my container and my VM metrics and my database metrics.
Now when you go into your Kubernetes metrics, you not only get to see all of the metrics associated with the aggregate Kubernetes cluster, you also get to see the metrics of the individual pods, your individual services that are running. You can see if you have an errant service that you installed into your Kubernetes cluster and which is taking up way too many resources.
Yeah, it's whatever Pete deployed, without a doubt.
Yes.
We got to stop him.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, so you get that end user view, but now all that stuff that the end user is deploying, all those services, all those capabilities that end user is deploying, well, the admin needs to know about that too. So when they go into their VCF operations dashboards, they get to see all the details associated with those services and the underlying hardware that they end up using. So they can map the entire service back to the hardware and the other metrics.
So if there's a bottleneck, a cluster's running too hot because you've overloaded it, you can see which tenant's causing the problem. You can see the same views they have, but you also can see below and above them. You can see the aggregate roll-up and the hardware underlay.
Well, we don't have these noisy neighbor problems, but let's say we did. You could actually find that if a cluster was performing poorly, you could go down to the underlying VCF, vSphere cluster to be able to figure out is there a problem with the host that they're running on.
Maybe the network connectivity where that pod's scheduled is causing problems.
All through VCF operations.
I'm curious. I know this came out not too long ago, VCF 9 G8 not too long ago, and now we're here at Explore. Have you been talking to customers about this, and have you heard anything good?
Oh man, like the reaction from customers is amazing. Like I have heard over and over again from customers, one, thanking us. Like we don't get very many thank yous over the years. Like there's a lot of issues we deal with.
Sure.
But thanking us for delivering the cloud on premise.
Yeah.
And not only that, they are thanking us. I have customers now looking at their entire infrastructure differently than they did before. They're rethinking their entire way they deploy, they manage, and they deliver capabilities to their end users. So it's foundational in the way that they're looking at it. I'm really impressed, one, with the way that customers have taken it on, but also the transition that we're in right now from software-defined data center to the private cloud of choice.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, we had a customer conversation right here on this desk actually yesterday, and that was one of the things they definitely said was, as a VCF 9 customer, the deployment for their team was just surprisingly simple.
Yeah.
Like they said, they just could not believe how simple and straightforward it was. It was really, really positive to hear that. Clearly, we know that was not the case in years past.
Yes.
And so it's certainly great to hear that now.
Yeah. And along with VCFA, all the attention we're getting on Kubernetes is brilliant.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. So what's next for you this week? Anything important?
Well, I have a demo that I'm doing at Krish's session at 2 p.m. And, I get to showcase all the great value to the end user that we're delivering, the developer or DevOps user that's going to be able to do a number of things with these services. And so I showcase now a DevOps user going through and provisioning a Kubernetes cluster, provisioning a database, provisioning a load balancer.
Oh, nice.
Provisioning a VM, and then using that load balancer within that VM, and then provisioning a private AI endpoint service. And so now they have this whole plethora of deployment that they can do to be able to build out their application.
I once waited 3 months to get my ticket to get responded to get a load balancer configuration done. So, if only I could time travel with these. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, for those that are not here, I'm sure you've got FOMO, but the good news is that session and many others will be available on download on VMware.com, so be sure to check those out. Dilpreet, it's always fun having you. Thanks so much for joining us on Virtually Speaking.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.